Okay, so I had a couple of follow-up questions. First, you're an outspoken person, and it must be a unique circumstance with your employer, your bank, because I can imagine um, if I was in a position like that and worked for somebody that the boss would take me aside from time to time and say, do you really have to say all that stuff?
Well,
They must be very accommodating for
I'll
you.
say this. I'm happy it's not a bank that's headquartered in Jefferson County. So a lot of politics that come into play with employment here wouldn't necessarily affect me. And you have to understand, Byron, that the bank is the reason why I don't say everything that I think.
that is the filter.
Yeah, the bank is the reason why I don't really say exactly everything that comes to mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never had a problem there. I know if it's dealing with city business and it's things that, you can FOI and stuff like that. Now, if it starts to become personal and character assassinations, of course. But yeah, I stay within the realm of the city council. And I will say this, FPT's bank president, he's a Christian man. He's a man of truth. And he's a blunt, honest person too. And so we do have that in common.
Okay. We talked at some point about the Alice program, and I think it was you who told me that that some of what goes on there is actually sort of folds into what banks need anyway, which is to loan money into depressed areas.
Yeah, low to moderate income tracts and minority areas. Yeah, it used to be your metro statistical area, so you could put a branch somewhere and you wasn't directly responsible just for that city or that county. But now if you put your branch in a distressed area, I mean, a certain amount of your customer base has to reflect that demographic where you're located. That's how banks get their ratings. Okay. And I know customers, a deposit customer isn't checking a bank's rating, but if you're a large deposit customer and a business, you do look for those things. So it has a huge effect on your rating and also access to grant monies and different opportunities and partnerships as well.
One other thing about what happened in front of your house, after that was over with, Chief Franklin said something to the effect of, "So what?" or "Why does it? What difference is this than any other armed robbery?" And I remember at the time thinking we have so many of these that they just all are part of the wallpaper of the city. I don't know that we have all that many armed robberies, I don't think.
We have a lot. I've met a lot of elderly women who have been held at gunpoint. It's, a lot of people have kind of been sharing experiences with me, but when Chief Franklin said that, I didn't watch it, but someone sent it to me, and he's asking, what's the difference? It's the same difference when you were in the state police and you got your son out of trouble when the other young man had to serve time. That's the difference. I'm not going to sit up here in front and deny my privilege with not only being in this position. I'm the daughter of a former law enforcement officer. I am the wife of the former sheriff, current county judge. Do you know how that looked across this state from different entities that nothing was said or done? Do you know what kind of confidence that gives your criminals, that regardless if the lack of them being caught is due to personal or just the lack of resources in the department, but when they know they can get away with robbing somebody like that? And
impunity comes to mind.
Yeah, that's a very bold statement, and it was for him to say it knowing that he's used his differences with different positions he's been in for his loved ones. It showed me that a lot of things where the ball was dropped, it made me feel like a lot of it was intentional. I know that a law enforcement agency was warned 3 months prior to me being robbed that something could happen to me or my husband.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I found this out after the robbery. But you know,
So they had picked up on threats?
or a person who might have been a part of a possible threat told about the threat prior to my robbery.
Is that what encouraged you to sell that house and move out of that neighborhood?
Yeah, because you know, it's unfortunate because I've done what this marketing with the city tells you to do.
Right.
Be this middle class person, invest back in your neighborhood, but I haven't had a return on my investment. The least you could do is, I'm not saying I want special treatment.
24/7, like
Yeah,
officers
but
out front. But
when you go kick a door in and nobody's guarding the perimeter and 2 of the boys jump out the back window, I just want the basics of what police work is.
like Police 101?
Yeah, stop telling people to come to this community if when they get here, they do not have any resources. And I'm gonna tell you something that, you know, the mayor still to this day have not made a statement on my behalf for that robbery.
Well, she kind of did. She said, I think at one meeting, she said, well, not everybody feels unsafe at their house. Something like that.
I believe she said she loves this city and she feels safe in her house.
Yeah.
And I took that personal, you know, because it was like a week out after the robbery. But I'm going to tell you something about trauma, Byron. It's not necessarily an event or someone doing something bad to you. You know, you can hurt somebody by hitting them. And you can also hurt somebody by not giving them water, by not providing their needs. So like things that are supposed to happen, not happening. And what I mean by that, it's like a deliberate trampling on your needs. The mayor made a deliberate decision not to speak about my robbery. That was a deliberate decision. It basically compounded my trauma. It added to it. And a lot of people in leadership, they have this authority that also their deliberate inactivity can be just as harmful.
Their absence of exercising it.
Yeah, and so that's worse than a person who throws a rock and hides their hand. That's a person who chooses to show you, this is who I am and this is who you are to me. And a lot of leaders do that. To me, it's a very cowardice way, you know, to do your job. Because as the mayor, when a sitting council member gets robbed, you say something. And nothing has been said. And that was very deliberate. And you can't convince me for all the money in the world that whatever feelings made her not say anything came from a good place.
We have talked about this. We talked about it in more detail in the first segment of this months ago. But just to bring these viewers up to speed, give us the Reader's Digest version of what happened to you. You came home, it was kind of late. You had somebody with you in the car. You were met by how many people? 3? Mm-hmm. 3 people,
so,
with some with guns.
If your wife is like this, but when I get out the car with somebody I like, it's a whole process. I'm talking to you as I'm opening the door, as I'm shutting the door.
Window goes down, we're still talking. Yeah.
And that's where we were. We were outside for probably like an hour talking in my driveway. But 3 gunmen come up, and for some reason, on that side of my house, the sidewalk is so tore up, nobody walks on it. They always walk on the street. And my landscaping is actually what hid them. And when I saw them, it was too late. It was too late. And
they were already up in your space, I guess.
Yeah, and the guns, you know, and I screamed. The guy told me to shut up. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, what were you thinking? Or why didn't you do this? Or I had a gun. It was in my purse. Byron, I would have been a fool to pull that gun out. And it was a 32. I haven't cleaned the thing. The bullet probably wouldn't even have left the chamber if I pulled the trigger. But
They had like serious weapons, right?
AK-47, AR-15, and a Draco.
All three had guns.
All three had guns, and that's a part I don't think people realize. I had to go through each one of them one at a time. So the first one, he took the purse, but I don't know if you noticed, he was still pointing the gun with finger on the trigger in my face. Okay. The second one is pointing the gun at me as the first one is walking off. He's making sure the first one is safe, and the second one is pointing the gun at me. So, first
Did they
one
have masks on?
One of them had their hoodie,
Yeah.
you know, when they close it really tight. So the second one walks off. Then the third one was holding the gun. And the second one, while he was holding the gun, the time wasn't awkward. It was like, okay, he's waiting. The third one stood there like a few seconds longer in a very weird way and crooked his head to the side. It was weird.
You were thinking this is it.
Well, that's funny because I had no thoughts. It's the stillest I've ever been in my life. Like, a lot of people think they know what they'll do in that situation, but when your body knows that you are in danger, it takes over. I was still, I feel like I could hear and see better, but I didn't have any thoughts, none. And so that was the third one. So there's 3 different guns I've had pointed at my face.
Goodness.
He passes the car, and what people don't understand, I couldn't see. You know, the camera could see because it was high up. I just hear gunshots, Byron. I don't know if he's coming back shooting at me, if they come back through my backyard another way. You know, I don't know what's going on. So I
Did they walk off down the street?
Yeah, and he was shooting up in the air. But, you know, I couldn't see that. So I didn't know if he was coming back shooting at us. And so at that moment, I looked out the rearview, out my cousin's, her back window. And the third one was kind of further down. I was like, leave. Just had my keys were in my hand. They weren't in my purse. So she drives off.
Left you there.
Yeah, but when you're in the moment, you're not thinking.
Let me get in the car.
And that's what I should have done. And guess when it hit me? When I got in the house, I have no phone.
No phone.
No
they
gun.
Got their purse.
I don't know where these boys are. And if you listen to the 911 tape, you can hear like a alarm in the background. That's me pressing the walkie-talkie.
Right.
And they don't.
You keep that on you?
No, it was in the house.
So
I ran upstairs. And
that was another nuance of that story that I don't think was that all council members have a device. You can push it and it sends an alarm. And nobody had ever seen it, so they didn't know who you were.
No, and so they were doing a roll call with the police because they're thinking one of their own is down. So Byron, I'm like, I got to get the hell out of this house. I get my keys and I have to walk back in that same driveway that I just got robbed in. I don't know where these boys are. You know, I got in my car and I hightailed it out of there, and I found the police. And it was like 3 of them together trying to figure out who's pressing this button. And I was like, it's me, I've been robbed. And they follow me back to the house. They take my statement. Now, mind you, when I first pressed the button, my cousin is calling 911. I was able to leave out the house, go get the police, come back, and it still took another 15 minutes for a patrol car to come to my house based off the call.
And you're like walking distance to the police department, right?
Yeah. And so I'm
half mile,
right on the other side of Maine.
Yeah.
You know, and the PD is right there.
Yeah, not even a half mile.
So that is traumatic within itself. And then the other part of it, the deliberate.
We're not going to talk about this?
Huh?
The deliberate, we're not going to talk about this part?
Yeah, we're not going to even act like it's real. The deliberate, we're not going to act like she is special to us and to this community. Byron, nobody deserves that. I do not think I'm better than anybody in this community.
But it's kind of the flip of that is if you let that happen to a city council member, do any of these, does the rank and file person have a chance?
Yep. Or if you're not a part of the clique.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing. And then the aftermath of just having to solve your own case.
Right.
You know, and honestly, Byron, I didn't want to have to do those interviews or release that video. But nothing was being said. Nobody was talking about it. And then rumors and things started happening that were totally far-fetched from what actually happened. And
Does that go back to our initial question of, marketing the city? It's like, oh goodness, we don't want to talk about that. If we give oxygen to that story, then we'll never live that down. So we better just not talk about it.
I think that's exactly what it is. But you know what the best marketing for the city would be? Citizens, we know we're going to go through things. But if you could assure the people who live here that if something happens or you lose a loved one, we're going to do everything within our power to make sure that that doesn't happen again and that we catch the people who have done this to you. That's the best marketing that you can do for your city.
Yes, just to make it real.
Yeah, and it's
and not just sugarcoat or gloss over
it's disheartening, the bad stuff. Byron, because I feel like I would have gotten more support if I was holding a gun. You know, if you had pulled your gun out and no, if I was robbing somebody, I feel like I would have got a little bit more compassion. But when you think about it, Byron, I lived. But it's a lot of people in this community. You talk about marketing, you talk about teachers, but you had a teacher in Howard Drive who was shot in the head driving home. And what they do for him, have a balloon release on campus. You talk about your schools. You've had a student who was killed in the hallways. We do not talk about this stuff anymore. This is a loss of life. You have a business owner, Buckwise Pawn Shop.
Yeah.
Who was killed. You talk about law enforcement, Byron. We have given them raises every year. This last budget season, we've given them the largest raise where they are competitive with states with 3 times our.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They are competitive now.
Our chief is making the same as our mayor. They're both making like $119,000. And I think it's warranted. We got everybody up. So they've gotten their raise. They can have facial hair, tattoos can show. We allow them to wear the uniforms they want to wear. They can have a marijuana on their background check. And we have less officers now than we did before we've done any of these things. Because the best way to market your police department is to protect your officers. Kevin Collins losing his life, that's bad marketing that you cannot cover up. And you have so many of these things happening, and the way we are memorializing these people, when the day Kevin Collins died, it was a headline about issues he was having within the department. And all of this scandal and stuff just leaves with the person.
Yeah.
And what frustrates me is I know for a fact that if I had died, the mayor would have been the first one to make a statement on my behalf. And they probably would have named a building after me by now and a street. And that's not what I would have wanted. It's not what I would have wanted. I would have wanted the city to burn to the ground, avenge, my murder, but
Well, the other side of, or another side of we don't want to talk about this, and we've talked about the police department a little bit. They've had a brain drain. They've had people with years of experience run off to other departments. I think Franklin maybe said it could have been the new chief. Well, I think it was Franklin. He said, they go someplace else because the pay is better, but their workload, they're not going to be expected to answer as many calls or whatever. The shifts are not as long.
what do they expect expect to do if they're not?
But I'm wondering
getting a
if,
call?
are we just, do we have a department that does not know how to react, does not know, is not trained enough to go to the back door and watch when they pound on the front door?
Absolutely.
Somebody needs to be at the back door watching for the people running out the back door.
And I think on top of that, departments have become so politicized that you also can't hold them accountable without seeming like anti-police. Because we've given you everything. No questions asked. First of all, we can't ask questions because it seems like you're anti-police. But where is the return? You know, and then you have to think, Byron, we've had 6 police chiefs in 6 years. So how stable is your department? And what gets me is we'll start something for one chief and a new chief comes in and doesn't want it. And we're starting over every single time.
Yeah, you would think it probably would take 5 years to get your game plan going.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I didn't know it was that many in that shorter period of time.
Because, you know, people, they talk about Whitfield bringing up the legislation for the part-time officers. But they don't know that started under Franklin. About time it made it to where we could present it, we had a new chief by then. And then there's other things you got to look at your city when you talk about marketing. Look at your school ratings. We're not doing so good.
We have a school rating?
D's and F's.
Yeah, I know.
How your elementary schools getting D's? You know, you look at your middle class. Ours is almost non-existent. You look at your renter-owner ratio. We're at like 50-50.
Yeah. And what a healthy place to be is like 85-15 or something.
Mm-hmm. I would even accept a 30 from Pine Bluff, you know, of renter, but 50-50 is really dangerous. You look at infrastructure. You know, we're looking at all these areas in rural America or impoverished America where their water is going bad. We have the same old drainage as they do. And it's so frustrating to me that when people are running for office, no one's asking them these kind of questions. But they do ask them, you know, do you support Go Forward?
Yeah. Well, we can seg into that. You know, give me some quick hits on what would make Pine Bluff a better place.
Whew. I kind of went blank for a second. 2 things, because I asked myself this question a lot. I've been in a lot of different rooms. Like I said, I've been doing this for 7 years. People have to start separating business from personal. A lot of situations we're in is because people don't want to tell people no. Because they like them, they grew up with them, they're a part of the same sorority or fraternity, they're the same race or gender. Like,
I've experienced that.
We
just don't say anything rather than not. We don't want to say no, so we're just not going to say anything.
We have to handle business and separate the business from personal, and that is the biggest thing that we have to do. Everyone needs to respect the laws, the codes, and the process or procedures. You know, we talk about the people who don't keep their yards up, but at the same time at City Hall, no one is going by the procedures that are set forth by state law. Byron, and it's a lot of gray area functioning going on too. For instance, the budget they presented to us, some of the numbers in the 2022 line item were changed so that we wouldn't catch it in the 2023 line item.
You mean they fudged the numbers in 2022 so that the difference going the next year did not look.
Exactly. And once the budget it's not illegal.
It's not?
No. Because once the budget is passed, it's the budget.
Yeah.
And another thing in a gray area, Mayor Washington's son is the interim director of the generator. This is a building we give $450,000 to. And Cottney, they say, is doing a wonderful job. But that doesn't matter. Now, they tell me he's not being paid, but I don't love Pine Bluff that much to commute here from Little Rock every day and have a full-time job. But he shouldn't have even, to me, have been on the board for the generator. We don't talk
Because
about,
it's the city that funnels the money.
yeah, and it's not illegal, but to me that is unethical. You look at the people who the mayor have hired. Did you know 2 people in code enforcement directors were forced to resign because they were misappropriating money?
No.
You know, the IT guy doesn't live here and wasn't going to come to the budget meeting until I told them to tell him, well, IT isn't going to have a budget this year if he doesn't come sit at this meeting. And people are going to have to.
Are we supposed to live in the city if you're working for the city?
We used to have something like that with department heads.
Yeah.
Department heads only. But even that, IT, our police department and fire department need you all the time. You know, and so it's this favoritism that happens at the city, but nothing's getting better. Everybody's going along to get along. And the second point to what can we do to make Pine Bluff better is citizens have to get more involved and more educated, and the ones who are involved are going to have to be more productive about their involvement. You can't keep saying, you work for me and these are our tax dollars. Like, that's an old song. You all need to understand city government and hold us accountable according to that. Stop allowing people to run based off your emotions.
Well, give me an example of that.
If you get somebody who comes to the city council meeting and they don't know that it is a formal meeting that has an agenda. So they've signed up to speak and they get on the mic and they're ranting. Y'all ain't said nothing about the youth. And you work for us. We put you here. This is our dollar. And you're sitting there like, it's an agenda.
That was really good.
And you know, that's the part. Because we have people that are active, but they're active in the wrong way. And I see a lot of people being manipulated by their emotions. You know, if I mention race in a room, we're not discussing anything else after that point is made. And so we're going to have to start separating business from personal. We're going to have to start holding people accountable. And I'm not saying just focus on the negative that's going on, but you have to tell the whole story. Byron, I could care less what other people think about this city, but I do care about what the people who live here think about this city. Pine Bluff has had violence as long as stories can go back.
Yeah.
It has, but you know the difference, Byron? When you think about your childhood or when you were here when you were younger, safety isn't necessarily the lack of a threat. It is the presence of connection. When you keep building more things that connect your community and you keep fighting against things that disconnect it, you will have a safer community. And that's my biggest issue with Go Forward.
Okay, welcome to another segment of the Newsroom. This afternoon we have Ivan Whitfield. Welcome, Mr. Whitfield.
Thank you.
Good to have you again. This is a repeat visit from our former city council member and former police chief. Good to see you.
Nice. Thank you for.
Do you have nice holidays?
Great. I've come to the conclusion, if the grandbaby is happy, then everybody in the house is happy.
I thought that was Mama.
That's what it used to be.
Mama, grandbaby.
It's the grandbaby nowadays.
Your happiness is like.
No, I'm way down there. You know.
Good to have you. So the top story of the day, I guess, was Henry Wilkins being sentenced, and I had people occasionally calling me saying, when is he going to get sentenced? And so there's just a lot of interest in that. Do you have any thoughts on what happened there and what happened to him? His sentencing?
I actually wrote him a letter to the judge, and
recently?
Yes,
Yeah.
just right before his sentence.
Okay.
And so I want to make sure that I didn't really know where you was going with that, because I didn't go to the hearing,
Yeah.
but I received a phone call after the hearing, and the individual said that Judge Miller called your name. And I said, okay, and he received a letter from you. And I said, he did. I did it the proper way, sent a letter up on speaking on Reverend Wilkins' behalf.
Well, was there an opportunity to do that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So I just took that opportunity and sent it through the proper procedure changes, and in hopes that he would get a chance to read it, and he did. And
Interesting.
they said that when he got ready to give his sentence to Representative Reverend Wilkins, that he mentioned that he had received a letter from me that I sent to him, that that he was moved by or touched by or was glad to see, however he put it. And so I believe a person, when they do things wrong and they acknowledge it, and you got to remember, I always tell people, I was with the police department for 34 years, and when you hit some hurdles, sometime make some bad decisions, you have to stand there and take the punishment, admit that you're wrong, take the punishment, and move on and do better. And I felt like if this city and others gave me that opportunity, then we should afford him that same opportunity.
Okay. Well, I wondered, so a letter of support for him.
I did.
So how do you know him from across the years?
Reverend Wilkins?
Yeah.
When I was just a young officer, when I came to Pine Bluff, I was downtown at a parade one day, and he walked over to me and had a conversation with me. He was glad to see me, and he gave me some encouraging words.
So you were an officer?
I was just a regular slick sleeve patrolman.
Yeah.
And he spent time talking to me, and I thought that was pretty good that he would look at a young person on the sideline and spend some time and talk to him and encourage him to stay afloat. Said that this community need young officer that's going to help our community. He gave me them words of encouragement. I never forgot it. And then when I hit my rock bottom at the police department some years back, back in 1999, I had issues and concerns. He called me up, or I ran across him, and we had prayer about that. And so there's always been a relationship. And anybody that know me know that I have a special place in my heart for pastors and preachers, and because so often they are overlooked, and we take them for granted until we need them. And I just don't do it. I've learned years ago that it's not just to love your pastor, but it's okay to be helpful and love other men of the word.
Vivian Flowers had some nice things to say about him. And I see Morel, our reporter, called and talked to her for a follow-up story.
Okay.
And she had some very kind things to say about Mr. Wilkins. So let's talk about the city. Probably most of this will be talking about the city. I covered one of the council meetings. I guess it was the last one of the year when you all passed the budget. Okay. And there was the passing of the budget didn't amount to much of that meeting, although that was kind of the purpose of that meeting. But a lot of that was to talk about, I guess, Glenn Brown Sr. Spoke a lot about his feelings about go forward. You spoke quite a bit about it. Mr. Cunningham was making a case for protecting the money for his project. There seems like a real break in between the council members, and a pretty deep divide, I guess I should say. Can you comment on that? You're not on the council anymore, but And perhaps it will be 6 in favor of go forward now and two not so supportive of go forward. But where does that leave the city? Are we just through having anybody question go forward money now? And
I think it's going to be, clearly the city is in a handicapped position. It handicaps our community. There's not another city that I know of in the state of Arkansas that citizen elects people to represent them, to take care of their tax dollars. And then when you go to take care of it, you give $4-5 million a year away to a private entity to do the same thing that the citizen elected you to do. So that makes us, to me, it handicaps us. And sometimes it takes years before you realize that you're handicapped. People will convince you that you okay. You're really not walking with a limp, but you know you are. And then sometime down the road, people will say, you know what? He does walk with a limp. So our city is in a handicap mode that we need to try to figure a way out to get out of it. It has caused great division with that city council. It has set the mayor in a position that the way I look at it is that it's not her plan of action, it is the go forward movement plan of action. And that's not why we was represented, sent to the city council.
Speaking of that, one of the people who took the podium that night was Jack Foster,
Mm-hmm.
and he said he felt like for the city to collect that tax and the way just to give it to go forward was illegal, and that if the city didn't stop, he was going to take it to court. I think I know where he's coming from. And he has battled this before of taxing entities, collecting tax dollars, and then just handing it out. And he said, even if it's the Arts and Science Center, if the city wants X done, and the Arts and Science Center can make a case for doing that, then let them make a presentation and get the money that way instead of just being Santa Claus. I think actually he used the term Santa Claus. Do you think he's on to something there? Do you think the city is on shaky ground when it comes to the way it's handling that?
Oh, very much so. Anytime you give a private entity $4 to $5 million a year of tax dollars, you're on shaky ground. I think Mr. Foster is on to something. In my heart of heart, I believe he's correct. The city attorney has given us advice for the past 4 years that the tax dollars belongs to the city council until you give it away.
Yeah.
And we have a mayor and enough council members that feel like it's in their best interest to give it away. I have a problem with it because when you look at it, we have what we call urban renewal, who really merely, they don't renew anything, they just tear down old houses, which is great, and I have no problem with that. Burn out houses that need to be
have been needed to be gone for
I have no problem
years.
with that. But watch this. Do the city have a department that tear down houses? Why are we duplicating the service? It's a shaky ground. They are handicapping what we do. We already have a department that's responsible for tearing down houses.
That's the inspection and
zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Why would why would you have to do that? It makes it absolutely makes no sense at all to have a duplicate service, as if they are. And the truth to be told, that the city bids out when they're going to tear your home down. So you would, the lowest bidder would tear that house down. Urban renewal, they'll tear it down themselves, and then they'll bill you. They don't have to bid it out. So
They'll bill the owner.
They'll bill the owner.
I wonder how that's going.
I think it's going. I believe in the near future you'll see that it's going to backfire. I don't know of any bills. Now they're torn down. I don't know. I think I heard 80 or 90 homes.
Yeah.
I believe somewhere in that vicinity. But I think as I was leaving the council, the urban renewal, they cannot bill you for tearing your home down. They have to send that bill to the city, and then the city has to bill you.
Well, if you are owner of that property and you have let that home get into such disrepair that it has to be torn down, or needs to be torn down, what's the likelihood that that person is going to pay for that demolition?
Very unlikely.
Yeah.
You may have probably 35%.
You think that high?
Yeah, 35% of them will hold it because their mother or grandmother and them had that piece of property, and they want to keep it if it's a reasonable amount. But the way that the urban renewal do it, if they want that piece of property, there's nothing to stop them from setting the price so high that even if you wanted to keep it, you couldn't keep it.
That's a moving target?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. They don't have a set standard.
It's not tied to how much effort it took to...
No. They set the price, how they want to do it. And they can handpick the ones they want in a certain area. And I think that's what I said. It has handicapped the city because the department that's responsible for it tears down homes as well.
You know, there was a story, we talked to you and Joni Alexander, and it was your contention that, actually both of your feelings, that Go Forward hadn't done much with that money. And Joni would say, well, if they had, then there wouldn't be billions of dollars sitting idle in the account. And then the story went on. We talked to Mr. Watley, the director of Go Forward, and he had a pretty good sized list of accomplishments that they had made. Where is that disconnect? Have they done much with that money, or have they not?
Well, if he has composed accomplishment, that should be able to speak for itself. I say to you that we need to investigate his accomplishment. If what does he declare and how does he define the word accomplishment? Because you purchased some buildings on Main Street, is that an accomplishment?
Is there anything in those buildings yet?
No, will not be.
Will not be?
Will not be. Because it's going to take probably, close to $150,000 to bring each building up to code. And
they're just shells, aren't they?
They're just shells on the ones that they have done that for. So is that an accomplishment? When you look at, they purchased the property downtown beside the track that they...
Where was that?
That's going to be, I think it's like 3rd and Walnut.
I've heard that mentioned.
Right up the street here. The old bingo parlor.
Yeah.
And paid $500,000 for it, and yet nothing is there. You can't put anything there until you pull up the concrete. Is that an accomplishment? I mean, where they gave, and they probably, what he probably was saying to you was that they gave $400,000. We give $400,000 a year to the generator, and the bank gave us a building. The bank fixed up the building, and they're using $400,000 of tax dollars to act like they are preparing small businesses for the future. Where are they? Where are the business at?
Does it bother you that the mayor's son runs that?
Yes, I mean, I spoke about that. It doesn't bother me. It don't smell, it don't pass the smell test. I think we have to be careful, and I said this last time, when we put people in positions that appears to be as if it's a payoff, as it's a, we're gonna give you something back in a different way.
Perception is everything.
It's everything.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what. So when you look at it, nobody should say that looks good. That
Didn't
looks
urban
terrible.
renewal buy? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Didn't urban renewal? No, if I'm pointing in the right direction. I guess it's like over here. That hotel at
Fifth and Walnut.
yeah, I guess so.
It's still there. They can't tear it down because it costs too much to tear down. Now they don't know what they're going to do with it. A year and a half from now, I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when that tax is not renewed, now the city has that headache.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, the city has that headache. You know, but
Do you think it won't pass the next time?
I hope, I pray, intend to work to assure of the no passage of it, because the lack of accomplishment, no matter what Dr. Wadley have said, I say to you that the only accomplishment, now he probably could tell you his personal accomplishment of when you can look at the area where he has purchased homes at. See, he can't count that for a community accomplishment. The area he has bought homes in the Alice area, that's not an accomplishment for the citizen. That's his personal accomplishment. We can't give him credit for that. I mean, he was able to take the inside information and invest money in an area that he felt like was going to grow. I'm not mad at that, but that's not an accomplishment for the city. That's his personal accomplishment.
You brought that up the last time.
Yes, and I'll stick with that. I think under any other government, people that do things of that nature, well, if you was in Washington or in New York, they call that inside trading. You couldn't survive that. But here in Pine Bluff, we give it a nod, you know, for the time being. But I do believe one day when they do a true audit of our tax dollars and the federal people do come in, that all those things will be, as the old preacher said, all of those things will come up again. It's coming back.
So this thing sunsets in 2024, right?
Correct. My understanding.
I've heard from more than one person with Go Forward say they are interested in getting it renewed. Would you see that happening this year? I guess we could ask them when they see that, although they might not be ready to say.
Well, my hope is that my hope is that the council and the mayor wakes up and say, what are you going to do with $4 million that we're not able to do?
Of course, that's not going to happen.
Well, I never say it's not going to happen. I believe that
Those are some tried and true supporters of Go Forward, though.
But I believe that there'll come a time that things happen, you say, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I just don't see any improvement. And it would be a shame for this council and the mayor to give their stamp of approval of another $28 million, and they didn't see anything done with the first 20 they have already given out.
this morning we interviewed Joni, and we talked about this quite a bit as well. And I say it's not going to happen. I mean, but she is an example of it happening because she was a supporter,
Correct.
gung-ho supporter in the early days. And as she leaves office, I think she thinks go forward is a net negative for Pine Bluff. And her claim, I guess her biggest disappointment is the lack of transparency. And she said it was brought to light when Jimmy Cunningham came in with so much transparency, and she realized that go forward just not even close to that.
Nowhere close. And I have to agree. And if you check the record, that's been my battle cry for the last 3.5 years.
By the way, your support of her to run for mayor, she said she's not quite ready.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Well, it wasn't even that close. She said, I'll never say never, but she said, it's just not my season right now.
Well, yeah. I think reason I wanted to bring that up because as I make decision that I made on the council, all I heard was Whitfield is trying to set up to run for mayor. It struck me even harder when I had one of my neighbors tell my wife that I had an agenda, a mayoral agenda, and I said to others, I never hid it, that I did run for mayor because Mayor Washington told everybody she was not going to run.
That's right.
It wasn't that I was running against her. She made it on the record that she was not running. So and after I did not win, I returned to my seat, and the mayoral thing was not in my cards. I went to Alderwoman Alexander and said to her, if you would run,
Yeah.
I would serve as your assistant campaign manager, and I would work as hard for you as I work for myself, because I felt like she would be able to take in this entire community, and everybody would have a voice, and that's what's needed at City Hall. But right now, we just don't have that.
You mentioned one time, you said, the council members do disagree on some things, but I think your comment was you all agree on a lot more things than you disagree on, but go forward would be one.
That's the biggest headache that I've had when I was on the council for 4 years. Probably if you check the record, I'm willing to say 85, 90% of everything else
Just sails through. Huh?
would sail through.
Yeah.
The go forward concerns has caused some undue just stress and headaches and problems, and has really hurt our city way more than it's ever going to help our city.